Hello, family members. Hope you're having a nice night tonight. Boy, I've got a good one for you today. But first, I'd like to tell you a little story. Uh, when exactly was this? This was like a couple of weeks ago. Um, I found Threads and started playing around on Threads. New social media that already had a lot of people on it that I know. I was like, all right, let me see what this is and get into it. And unfortunately or fortunately, I did. And I got in the habit of just kind of posting whatever it was that I was thinking on Threads. And that was going for pretty well for me up until I came across this meme that made me mad. And it made me make a response that people probably didn't understand the context on and just kind of jumped to weird conclusions. So here we are. I saw this meme and it was talking about the slogan, "Love is love." Now, if you're unaware of the slogan, it's one that allies use a lot, people within the community use a lot. It really kind of came to prominence as a way of advocating for marriage equality. That's really, where that came from, because what it's talking about is that, all people should have equal access to this legal contract to codify this is their romantic partner. This is who I love. And it shouldn't matter what conditions there are there, whether it's a man and a man, a woman and a woman, a man and a woman, whatever. And for that particular campaign, that particular issue, I'd say it was probably a fairly effective slogan, when what you're trying to say is we want equality for love, or AKA marriage, which is love and marriage don't necessarily always go together, but they are kind of intellectually supposed to, I suppose. Um, in that context, it makes sense, you know. However, after the Supreme Court made its ruling, marriage equality, or at least, same gender marriage was suddenly available to people, um, that slogan kept being used and has, I think, become, inextricably linked with the broader queer community, and I think that's a bad thing. And I think that's hard for people to hear because they like that slogan. It is not a very challenging slogan, is it? We live in an allo-romantic society that really values romantic love and pair bonding relationships like that. And so something that boils the issue down to love seems hard to argue against, It perhaps oversimplifies, but in that oversimplification, it gives you maybe a bit of a rhetorical advantage. And I'm sure people like that, right? But the thing is that it is a respectability politics slogan, because it's not hard to get hetero, normies to buy into the idea of love, because that's something that they can understand. But the whole point of being not hetero is being something that people can't understand if they are. How can I put this a little bit more clearly? What I want people to do is I want people to completely divorce the idea that love or attraction or anything external is what makes them queer, because it's not. A gay man was gay before he ever had his first gay relationship, right? A you know, you don't have to if you're allo-romantic, you don't have to be in love to be allo-romantic. You can have never fallen in love in your whole entire life, but it doesn't mean that you couldn't, you know? I think that once you strip away those external things, people are like, well, what's left? Being gay isn't about who you love or who you're attracted to. It's about you. It's about your internal perceptions. It's about you looking at the world differently than a heterosexual person. Being transgender, it's not about anything external. It's not about your body or the way other people perceive you or anything like that. It's about yourself and how you perceive yourself and how you perceive the world and want to be perceived in return. Being asexual and aromantic is a very similar thing. It's not about other people. It's not. It's like the activist Jasmine Benoit. She's an asexual advocate, and she is a model. She dresses very sexy, and they're like, "Why would you do that if you're asexual?" And it's like, it's not. What I'm wearing isn't what makes me asexual or allosexual. If you're coming into here and you're like, what the heck is alloromantic and the heck is allosexual? It just means that you're not aromantic and you're not asexual, that you feel those attractions. And if you are allosexual and alloromantic, you have no idea what it's like to live your life if you're aromantic and asexual. Our perception of the world is just different. And we have to exist in this world where the assumption is everybody feels sexual attraction, everybody feels romantic attraction. And I cannot tell you how frustrating it is to have the queer community glom on to this love is love idea that completely erases my place in the queer community. Love has nothing to do with my queer experience. Romantic love has nothing to do with my queer experience. And even if it is more comfortable for the normies to talk about being queer in terms of, romantic attraction, which is something that they don't find, scary or whatever, if it erases part of the community, it's a bad slogan. We need to challenge heterosexual, alloromantic, allosexual people to see the world in a different way, to understand that there are people who are queer who experience the world in another way. And we can't give them the easy way out. We can't sacrifice part of the community in order to make another part more palatable. I don't want in any way to diminish or be glib about the imminent horrible threat that trans people are under. But it's very interesting to me to see people who are not trans who can wrap their minds around the fact that you don't throw trans people away in order to be more respectable for the other parts of the community, okay? They get that for trans people, but then they don't understand that perspective for aromantic people. Aromantic and asexual people constantly have to explain that, yes, we are in fact depressed. Asexuality is still considered a mental health disorder unless you self-identify, which means if you haven't been educated on asexuality, if you don't know that it's a thing and that there's other people like you out there, you might be subjected to conversion therapy, like drugs, sometimes even corrective rape. And being aromantic is so challenging in a society that it infantilizes you, looks down on you if you're single, because the assumption is that there's something that you want that you can't get, or that you're not fully grown up, or you're a loser, or whatever. On top of the fact that you're expected to have a pair bond as an adult. You know, they expect you to have someone to pick you up and drop you off and stuff when you have like minor surgeries and things like that, dental work. You know, I don't have that. I have to schedule around other people if I'm lucky. You know, that was before I lost the ability to drive. You know, there are societal incentives for people who are in pair bond relationships. They like can get money off their taxes. That's not something I can never do. Like, I am living in a society where almost all of the media assumes everybody is, you know, desiring a romantic relationship and sex. I'm living in a society where almost all the freaking songs are love songs. You know, it's just everywhere, shoved down my throat constantly. You're different. You don't belong. You're not like us. You're not like us. You're not like us. And then I turn to people in the queer community and be like, hey, could you maybe consider us aromantic people in your conception of what it is to be queer? Can you maybe advocate for me and for people like me so that we can educate more people? I didn't know I was aromantic. I didn't know there were other people like me. I didn't know the term until I was 35 years old. I had no way to describe my experience. I just knew I was different. I just knew that every time I got into a relationship, it felt wrong and it couldn't work. And I didn't understand why, and I didn't understand there were people like me, and I didn't understand that I wasn't broken and I wasn't alone. And that's because concepts like this, where we really truly break down the heteronormativity of society, happen in obscure little places. They're not spoken of in mainstream media, not just legacy media, but new media that is queer. I almost never see people talking about aromantic issues, and occasionally they'll mention asexuals, but usually there's a very shallow understanding of what asexuality is. People think asexuality is, I just don't want sex, and that's not what asexuality is. It's not having sexual attraction. There are people who are asexual who are in romantic relationships who are sex, you know, like they are fine with having sex with their partner. They'd be fine not having sex with their partner, but their relationship may not look that much different at all to somebody from the outside. That doesn't make them less asexual. It doesn't mean that the way they perceive the world isn't different. And that's why I want to break up this idea that love is a good slogan, that defining being gay or being queer is about who you love or who you have sex with. I mean, number one, that completely neglects people who are, like genderqueer, non binary, trans. They're still queer, even though what makes them queer isn't necessarily about love or attraction, right? It's just far more broad for us to talk about the queer community, the LGBTQIA plus two spirit, etc. community as people who perceive the world differently than the heteronormative expectations, the allonormative expectations, allosexual, alloromantic, all of the quote unquote assumptions, defaults. Let's tear them down. And the people who perceive the world differently are the queer community, For a long time, people would talk about like gaydar and be like, oh, that guy's gay. I can tell, blah, blah. But can you? Can you really? There are people who look as milk toast and normal as possible that are queer as heck. And there are people who look extremely flamboyant who are heterosexual. There are butch women who are heterosexual. I know quite a few of them. They're fine. They're lovely. Your external presentation isn't what makes you queer. Who you're involved with doesn't make you queer. It's the way you perceive the world. Now, going on threads and posting this, meme about love is love being exclusionary and getting this like avalanche of people telling me how stupid and wrong I was incredibly depressing. It just reminds me of how far we aromantics and people who consider themselves our allies have to go. I don't know that there are many people who genuinely consider themselves aromantic allies. They may be sort of aromantic allies by proxy because they support the queer community or part of the queer community, but deliberately think about things in an aromantic, inclusive way. I don't think that happens very often. And that's what I'm begging for. I'm begging for people to be like, hey, I'm alloromantic. I don't really understand this, or I don't experience this. But the people who do experience this deserve my support and understanding. And I'm going to uplift them and their issues. Because right now, we need that. We need visibility. There are far more people who are aromantic who don't know the term than do. I'm almost certain of it. Because one of the comments that I got kind of explained it. It's like, oh, this Tumblr stuff. I've never used Tumblr in my life, okay? That's why I hadn't heard of aromantic until I was 35. In retrospect, I wish I had been on Tumblr. Maybe I would have run into it sooner. But it has to come out of places like that, those niche places, into broader understanding. When we are only spoken of in our own little niche places, it gets that much easier to dismiss us and our needs and say, well, this, a lot of people like this slogan. Why should we stop using it because it excludes a small amount of people? I had a lot of people who were aromantic themselves who said that. But why should we keep using it if it's exclusionary? Once it's pointed out that it's exclusionary, why do people want to fight back against that? Why is this slogan worth more to people than aromantic people? Like, I felt it was exclusionary. I had people tell me that nobody cares about it. I said, I just said I care about it. And you came and the first thing that you thought was nobody cares about this. So either you think I'm nobody or I'm a liar. And I'm not the only person who feels this way. How many of us need to speak up and say, hey, don't speak over us before people will listen? How many aromantics are gonna speak up after seeing things like what happened to me? They're not. They're going to be like, oh, well, let's placate. Let's get along. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that it's right. I don't think that it's just. I feel like every conversation that I start in a semi-public space about aromanticism has to start at the very beginning, defining it, explaining that yes, our queerness affects our lives and it's hard for us to fit into a society that's not made for us, just the same way it is for every other queer person. Yes, we deal with family rejection and judgment and all sorts of misunderstanding and bad tropes and stereotypes. How can we ever move forward if the broad queer community won't let the conversation ever move past that? Just a basic, hey, we exist, please acknowledge us. I keep hearing Jasmine Benoit and other people like her, like, say, the Ace couple or the Ace dad, the few influencers and people are out there that are talking about asexual issues and aromantic issues, having to just have the same conversation over and over and over and over again. And leaning into slogans like love is not going to get us past that. Being queer is not about anything external. It's about who you are inside and how society tries to erase that identity. It's just it's very hard to imagine that hetero people, sexual and allo-romantic people, just your milquetoast default person, is ever going to accept the queer community if the queer community can't even accept all parts of itself. It's like when the Blair Whites of the world speak poorly of non-binary people. The more respectable queers have the ability to try to climb over those of us who are obviously never going to fit in. And that shouldn't be the way that the community works in general. It should be just a few bad actors out there, the exceptions, not the rule. But it feels like any time that I bring up aromanticism, it's okay to just dismiss my concerns. It's okay to just dismiss the importance of visibility and acceptance for the aromantic community. And I hate that. I absolutely hate that. Like, there are great places that you can go online and find little niches where you can find ace supportive groups and aromantic supportive groups. And that's great. I'm so glad that we have those spaces. But those shouldn't be the only places that I can go and expect people to know who I am and what I am, and that I am part of the queer community and that I matter. I don't know if any of this will change anything. I am I am constantly trying to think of ways that I can bring aromanticism to the attention of influencers who might be amenable to speak on these issues. But, I don't have any connections. I'm not really anybody. I'm not going to keep speaking because I feel like somebody's got to. I feel like we just. I'm here for a reason. I'm a religious person. I hope that this isn't triggering to anybody. But I believe that I was made for a purpose and I'm here for a reason. And I believe that I was made to be aromantic and proud of it and to want to reach out to other people like me and lift them up and to challenge the idea of just this default that a romantic relationship is the most important relationship you'll ever have in your life. That's not true. It might be true for you, but it's not true for everybody. And speaking in absolute terms about things that aren't absolute is how we end up where we are, as far as people like refusing to believe that there are more than two sexes. It's like, no. And intersex people exist. They have always. And, speaking about sex in like science class in general terms in an absolute way, that's what people remember. They don't go back and they refine their knowledge later. That's why I hate the Bohr model of the atom. Like, they teach you the Bohr model first and then later on go, well, this isn't actually accurate. And then they start teaching you more like accurate models. But what do people probably most remember? The Bohr model, the thing that they learned first. It's like when Trump lies about something. If you go back and poll the public later, even though everything came out to say that that was wrong, there's still going to be a pretty high number of people in the general public who just remember the first statement they heard about that, and they never looked any deeper. You can't draw people in with something that's oversimplified and then expect to be able to go back and refine it later. You can't erase the aromantic community in your sloganeering and then expect to be able to go back and put that in later. It just doesn't work. You just erased us, and that's not okay. Well, family members, that's what I got on this. I'm out of time, as usual. Run out of time before I run out of things to say. I hope you take care of yourselves. My dad is now in a rehab. His stroke on Friday was in his thalamus. It was kind of a small stroke. His rehab is up north. I'm not going to be able to visit him, but my brother will be. So that's nice. All right. Take care of yourselves, family members. Give everyone you love a hug and kiss, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.